All right, Bang Bang. Today is Tuesday. It is March 8th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. It's myself. It's Chief. It's the Dog Walk. It's Tinfill Tuesday. It's History Tuesday. It's World News Wednesday on a Tuesday. It's everything involved. How are you?
I'm good. That was a lot. We were doing everything. And there is a little bit of everything, I feel like, in this episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we are getting into, drumroll please, the topic on everybody's mind, the topic all over Twitter, the thing that your grandparents can't keep talking, won't stop talking about. It's gas prices.
I don't want to make this a grandparent issue.
Oh, really?
This is a real problem.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this is gas prices. That is a tax. When that goes up, that is effectively a tax increase on every single person in the country.
But that doesn't mean that it's not a talking point that your grandparents love to have.
I know people younger than me that are really on their first job. They're commuting, they're driving, they're not making very much money, and now they have like none.
Yeah.
Because if you're paying over $4 a gallon for gas and you're commuting, let's say, like, I know my first commute for my job when I was living at home, I was spending, an hour a day or an hour each way in the car. So we got Lance is nodding along like, yeah, like gas is fucking impacting his daily life. So it's a every single person issue, including intern Lance.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's really
Tesla Ed over here goes electric one time and
really,
forgets about
it's just if people want to talk shit. I predict the future. So.
Everybody should get on it.
If anybody wants more predictions, please let me know. I'll be here all week. And we could just sit here and we could crank deals. And,
were you doing oil speculation too, you asshole?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was doing all this.
Buying up gold too?
Yeah.
That's through the roof.
What the fuck's he doing getting that? Well, I knew this was coming.
Yep. That's smart.
So
smart.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know what else is smart? You know what else is a good move before we really get underway here? Getting Roman. It really is a good move, man.
You know what spring is associated with, right?
What's that?
Everybody's mating in the spring. It's mating season.
So
we had one nice day. What was it? Saturday was nice. I swear there were people out. People were flirting. I went to Declan's for a bit, and you could just love was in the air. People were ready to bust out of winter. They were looking around, and if you are lucky enough to find a girl this spring, you want to make sure you do it right. You want to make sure you have those Roman swipes.
You got to have the Roman swipes. Stop using those old methods. Stop, thinking of your favorite beer garden in the city now that it's getting warmer, because that's not going to last, okay? You need the Roman swipes. It's a clinically proven way to last longer in bed. They're effective, easy to use, and they're fast acting, but they don't require a prescription. They can ship to you in discreet, unmarked packaging, and each swipe packet is small enough to hide in your wallet for whenever you need it. So super easy to use. Take the swipe out of the packet, swipe it out, and let it dry. You're good to go. That's it. To get your hands on them, go to GetRoman.com/dogwalk to get your first month of swipes for just $5 when you choose a monthly plan. That's GetRoman.com/dogwalk. Go get the swipes, people. like he said, it's mating season. You want to be ready to go. All right, so Chief, the gas prices in America.
Yeah, it is. I would say that was a major talking point of Joe Biden's State of the Union. It was basically, energy costs and a lot of Ukraine stuff. But I would say that those were two. It's probably the leading domestic issue. And like we said in the intro, it's because everybody is feeling it. And this has been an issue that's been trending this way long before the Ukraine invasion. So if you were to type in like what's going on with these oil prices, you'll find articles about, in the fall, if you remember, like Biden said, I think it was in November, he announced that they were tapping into strategic reserves for oil to try to have some relief at the pump. And there's been, so this has been an ongoing issue. And then this Russian invasion of Ukraine has increased the price tremendously for a few reasons that may or may not be, they're somewhat surprising to me. So maybe people will learn a little bit something. I certainly learned stuff doing the research on this. And I should say off the top, I'm largely an idiot. Okay, so I try my best to research and understand and conceptualize this, but like the price at the pump is an extremely complex issue because it's the market, right? So there are hundreds of factors and variables that impact this all sorts of different ways. And we'll try to touch on the major ones and try to clear up some things. And hopefully everybody will have at least a little bit better understanding of why gas prices are where they are, and just kind of where the bottom line gas price is to begin with. And I think that might be a good place to start, because it's like, let's say gas, right? Crude oil right now is at the time of this recording. So we're recording this on Monday. It's $118.50 per barrel. Okay. And the national gas price average, okay, it's going to be different in different states, and we'll explain that as well. But the national, it's over $4 a gallon for the first time since 2008. So we could have like all-time records. We've seen California, they have gas prices up over $7 a gallon. Like it is crazy, and it is the craziest it's been in 15 years. And there's a lot. So the Russia conflict and invasion of Ukraine is a factor, but this, like I said, it's been trending this way really for a long time, and we'll hopefully try to break all that down.
Yeah, I mean, that was your first thing when I because someone, shout out to a listener, I forget his Instagram handle, but I saw his message and he was like, hey, you guys should talk about that. And I'm like, I agree, because this is what people want to talk about. And I don't think, obviously, I don't know what's going on. And the first thing you said, you're like, it's very complex. Like, it's not
in my text to you.
Yeah, so you're like, it's not just like an easy, oh, well, here's why. So I'm interested to hear what some of the factors are.
And I think people in general like to oversimplify things sometimes for political gain, sometimes for TV ratings and clickbait and things like that, and wanting to point the finger for a variety of reasons too. And it is, like I said, it is very complex. So I think maybe we should even just kind of break down why or where the prices of gas come from. Okay. So obviously it's going to be tied to that crude price per barrel, and a barrel is just a quantity, and a barrel equals 42 gallons. So you talk about a barrel of crude oil, and what that really means is just 42 gallons. And when you go through that crude oil, okay, it has to be sent to a refinery, right? So when you pull it out of the ground, it's just like that. Remember that? I can't remember the name of that show. My parents would be mad at me, but it's about that kind of a redneck family. And they struck oil in Texas somewhere and became like super rich. I think it was a show in the 70s. I'm blanking on the name, but they call it, that
MASH.
I don't think it was MASH, but like black gold and Texas tea. Like it's just this black goop that comes out of the ground that you obviously can't put that in your car. Like it has to be cleaned up and refined. And when you have that barrel, that 42 gallons of crude oil, the maximum amount, or I shouldn't say maximum, I think it's about the average amount that you're going to extrapolate of just gasoline that can be used from that barrel is about 20 gallons of gasoline. So when you go through this refining process, and I'll touch on what that looks like quickly too, you end up with, out of that 42 gallons of crude, you get 20 gallons of gasoline. And then there's about, every barrel would be in there's different types of crude. So I'm using like kind of a catch-all. But you get 20 gallons of like other stuff. Okay. So there's oil that is, you'll pull out of that 20 gallons goes to gasoline. Then some it's, during the refining process gets turned into like motor oil, and some gets turned into jet fuel, and some gets turned into plastics, and then some is just waste. So you're going to have like, let's say 2 gallons out of that 42 is just waste. So you have 20 gallons of other stuff, and then you have 20 gallons of gasoline, and that kind of goes into the price. So that's kind of like right away. So you separate that out, and then the crude cost that we're talking about right now, it's $118.50 per barrel. That covers the cost of getting it out of the ground, and also the transportation to put it to the refiner. So that's kind of all baked into that. And then it goes through your price at the pump. So you have the sale price of your refined gasoline, or your refined is X. So it comes out. So the way you've ever seen one of those like mobile plants, or where these oil refineries? It looks a lot like a giant version of like a distillery. Okay, and that's essentially what they're doing. They're heating up the crude, and then like to crazy temperatures, because oils have different boiling points. So it goes up these smokestacks, okay, or up these giant stacks as if it was like any kind of alcohol. And at one point, there's a level of boiling point where it gets taken out, and that's your motor oil. And then it goes up, and that's another byproduct. And then some of that energy is used to actually power the refinery itself. So some of that is taken out, and then it goes up, almost to the top. That's where it gets boiled and then recondenses and becomes gasoline. So it becomes more that everyone's seen what gasoline looks like. It's clear, and it's just because you've superheated it to the point where like the vapors rises and it resettles as almost like as a gasoline, okay, or as gasoline. And that's the process. And they're able to take that out, okay. So they have a sale price at the refinery to these various, I'm making up round numbers to make it easier. Let's say that they will sell it for $3 a gallon at the refinery. So it leaves the refinery $3 a gallon. There's a transportation cost baked in, okay, to get it from the refinery to these various gas stations. So we've all seen like the Shell trucks, BP trucks, like drive and park into the gas station. There's a cost associated with that, like a transportation cost. That is also, so it's like the cost of the gasoline, if it's up, okay, well, it's always going to go up a little bit more because they're going to pay to have it transported there, and they're running on their own supply. So it's like, hey, we'll sell it to you, but you also have to, if the price is $4 a gallon for the refinery, for the gasoline, well, it's also, who's paying that is the truckers that are shipping it. So like their kind of cost is baked into that as well. And then you have taxation. Okay. So taxation is like a hidden cost. Like there's a gas tax on multiple levels all over the place. So in Illinois last year, they doubled the gas tax. So now for every gallon of gas, there's an automatic 39 cents. Okay. So 39. So people are talking, oh my God, it's over $4. The state adds 39 cents to that in Illinois. And the states with the highest gas taxes are Pennsylvania is over 50 cents, California is over 50 cents, Washington, New Jersey, New York, they're all over 40 cents. And then Illinois is the next highest at 39. So like those states are going to have the highest gas prices in the country always, okay? Then you have a federal gas tax as well. That's automatic across the board, 18.3 cents per gallon. So now, and then Cook County, okay, if you're living in Chicago, and this is all public record, so you can, wherever you live, you can look up if your county has an additional gas tax. Cook County has, if you fill up at the gas station near us, automatic another 6 cents. So before anything, there's 63 cents of just tax based into every time you're at the pump. 63 cents is going in Illinois and Chicago, just tax. Okay, so if you're looking at the price per gallon at $4, and if you just remove the tax, now you're down to $3.37. It's a huge difference. Yeah. Now that tax goes to fund a lot of different things, and you could argue whether that's a good and necessary tax or not. I didn't really look into where the spending goes on that, but that is a big part of it. Okay, and then the gas station needs to make, their profit on selling you, that local Shell or BP or whatever, Marathon. They're going to increase the price about 10 cents a gallon over what they received it. And then a lot of times they go up more than that because they have to cover their ass on credit card. That there's a 5 cent processing fee for every transaction at the pump or every transaction everywhere in credit card fees. So if they will a lot of times will increase the price, either split the difference or just bake that right into their price, that 5%, that 5 cents rather, not 5%, 5 cents per gallon, right in to cover the credit card processing fee. So when you bake all those things in, there's a lot of like kind of hidden costs right off the top that nobody thinks about. Big one is tax. Another one is logistics, transportation, and then your credit card processing fees, which depending on your bank, you might find a way cash back. I don't know, but like that is baked a lot of times baked into the cost at the pump at a tune of 5 cents per gallon.
But to me, the taxes have always been the case for most of these states, right? It's always been high, and then the credit card, sure, maybe they've gone up a couple cents, but
yeah, but you probably feel it if you're one. I'm just trying to break down
how it works for sure. So
right.
I get what you're doing.
Right. So the biggest, so if you're paying $4, at the pump,
just know it's not only on the gas companies.
Correct.
It's
yeah.
There is other states
right, and so that is a big part of it. So and now if you're trying to get to why gas prices are increasing, one of the reasons they're increasing right now in the spring is because they always go up in March and April. Okay, so it's always like you can, and that is like a production thing that a lot of these refineries slow down production to go through a maintenance period, because this is typically a slow time of year anyways. You come out of Christmas, right? And so you don't want to go through you don't want to shorten supply during Christmas, because people will feel it harder. You don't want to do it in the summer when people are traveling around, road trip season, all that. So you look at the calendar and it's like, when can we do our yearly preventative maintenance, which will cause us to have to slow down production? Historically, it's always March and April. And so there's going to be a few different, again, there are variables with this, but that is, if you look at charts that go over time, there's always a little bit of a bump this time of year, just because the refineries just aren't producing as much intentionally, so they can do all the maintenance on all these different systems that allow them to produce oil. So March and April, so we have almost like a perfect storm of things going on right now that are causing it to go up. One of them is this scheduled decline in domestic refinery production, and maybe it's international too, but at least domestic, that is causing the supply to be down. So right now we're feeling it a little extra harder. And then if you look at it,
that's interesting. I definitely don't think
I didn't know that.
People know that March and April is
did not know that.
The king gas months.
Yeah. So where they're just like, hey, slow everything down. We're going to hit, so if you're normally running, let's say 6 refineries, you might just run on 5, okay, for every week. And you're like, we're shutting this one down for a week, this section of the factory down for a week, and we're going to clean it all out, do all the maintenance, check everything. Then we'll turn it back on and close the next one down, and just go. And that happens all over at all refineries.
Now, is that also a thing now with like the energy conservation efforts? Like, is that why things are?
We'll get to that too, because that's definitely a factor as well. So, and then there was this issue, and this goes back to it's one of our kind of long running inside jokes. If you listen to the Sirius Radio from 2020, that where we were talking about how oil futures were trading negatively, okay? And that was the beginning of COVID, where everybody's shut down, all the offices are closed, so nobody's commuting to work, nobody's driving to see their family, no road trips. So there was such this increase in supply and not enough demand, to the point that White Sox Dave hears that we have this oil abundance, to the point that it's negative, it's trading negatively in futures, and he's like, why aren't they paying me to drive around in my car? And then we come up with there's all these water tanks, the empty water tanks, these Chicago rooftops, and it's like, let's fill those. We'll dig pools and just fill them with oil, and we'll just hold this oil and diamond hands like Portnoy, and hold it until the market goes back up, and then we'll sell it, which is not legal, but that was where our idiot brains were working. And he's like, why aren't they paying me to drive around in my car?
It's one of the greatest questions ever asked on Sirius Radio. Right. Why aren't they paying White Sox Dave to fill up his tank?
Right, to drive around in that Nissan Altima.
Why? Yeah. That's still a great question.
Great question. They should have been doing that.
If anybody knows,
could have increased demand by paying
WST.
White Sox Dave to drive around, be an Uber guy. He could have had it coming and going. But because of that, because the price of oil tanked hard in 2020, oil companies and a lot of these oil producing countries, so in Russia and OPEC specifically, they never lose money, but they were, they didn't have the types of margins and profits that they normally see. So they like the fact that oil is now up significantly and gas is up significantly, and it's all energy costs. Heating oil is up, natural gas is up, all these different prices, jetliner price, jet fuel up, all energy prices are up right now. And a lot of that is because they had an excess supply in 2020, so they're not increasing their production now because they want to recoup. So if it was $55 a barrel in 2020 and it's $100 a barrel now, again, obviously as of today it's 118. You're going to be making more money if you're Saudi Arabia on that barrel than you were last year, where you were taking a bit of a hit because oil crashed because of the pandemic. So you're trying to recoup some of that. So when Biden announced in November, and he's still doing it, and they've gone down to talk to Venezuela, Maduro, like they're trying to get production up. He's using like all the diplomacy to try to get oil production up. It's like, hey, all these, if you're a heavy consumer, and you have strategic reserves like the United States has, like let's release some of those strategic reserves, because this is a global market. So it's not, there's limited options for the United States government to have these short-term fixes. There really are. So I know a lot of people want to like point the finger, and I'm a big point the finger guy. Right now it's hard to point the finger because there's just not that much you can do. Biden went to, this is back in the fall, he went to Russia and he went to OPEC, which is all the like Saudi, really it's all those countries in the Middle East and a few others around the world. But like the Saudi Arabia is like, they're the kings of this. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like they're kind of what they say. It's an organization. It's an organization of petroleum exporting countries, I think is what OPEC stands for. And they kind of drive the policy. So Biden went to them in the fall, in November, being like, we need you guys to increase supply because, people are hurting on these gas prices. And they're like, nah, like we heard you, but no, we're good. We're just going to keep it producing the levels we are. So that we had that problem. Conversely, they did the opposite in 2014. Okay. So 2014, United States, because oil had been trading so high before, a lot of these other domestic oil companies were able to be like, now it is now cost effective to be doing fracking and these other technologies that allow us to increase our domestic supply, because at $50 a barrel or less, you can't make any money really fracking. Okay. At $100 a barrel, you can. So when in 2008, we had this giant spike in oil prices, that made it economically viable for domestic oil production to go up, because they could invest in the technology and these fields that had been previously tapped out and do fracking and these other methods that are more expensive than traditional drilling. And this includes like offshore drilling at some places where you're able to be like, hey, like, it's just simple economics or business, where it's like we can make a profit when oil is at $90 a barrel by doing fracking. If it goes, to $30, $40, $50 a barrel, we can't. So we're going to stop doing that. So in 2014, the Saudis lost market share to the United States because we were producing so much oil domestically that we were a net exporter as late as the end of 2020. So we were exporting oil, not really importing anything from anywhere except for Canada, and doing very well. And then this process where they started flooding the market with more crude was and Russia joined them after this. So Russia is the third largest producer, or third largest producer and exporter of oil and gas, behind OPEC and then behind the United States. So they kind of got together and were like, let's flood the market so we can stop the United States, these private companies, from producing domestically for fracking. So then we'll regain the top dog spot as oil producers, meaning OPEC, and then Russia would slide in behind them if we can drive these companies that are doing fracking out of the marketplace. And that's what they did. So all these companies that were doing fracking before the United States They're like, we can't make money doing fracking anymore. So there's all these, we shouldn't be fracking, all these documentaries about how bad fracking is. I'm not here to speak about whether those are true or not, but the Saudi Arabians and the Russians kind of colluded to tank the price of oil to drive out the frackers, which is our main source of domestic supply, and did so successfully.
Damn.
Yeah.
Dude, okay, so this is making a lot of sense because I remember we did a show before about how it went down, and it was because we were getting it domestically.
Yes.
So I was like, man, what happened? Like, did we just run out?
Right.
Yeah. Like, what was what happened? But
and
to know that they flooded the market and then made it kind of, kind of hamstrung us to do it. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then like that's when I was talking about the finger pointing for quick fixes thing. There's a lot of people being like, well, this is what we get. Biden shut down that, the Keystone Pipeline, which takes like shale oil, which is another thing it's expensive to produce, similar to fracking because it's just a different method of extraction that is it sits in this type of sand. It's more expensive. So, but it was economically viable because the prices were high. So they were building this pipeline to take it from Canada. And there is, it seems like there's merit to having that pipeline. But then the environmentalists on the left, like really pushed back and then Biden shut it down. But if that pipeline it never existed as a fully functioning pipeline. It's supposed to take it from Alberta down to refineries and storage locations in Oklahoma. But it was never operational. So if it were operational today, it would probably have an impact, it would positively impact price, at least from where we're sitting, but not that much. And you can make an argument, well, it was never in production anyway. So it's not like he took an existing pipeline, that Keystone Pipeline, and shut it down. It's never, so like that would be like, hey, like you shut down this pipeline that was flowing oil. It never was actually in operation. So it was never actually flowing. So that one to me is kind of negligible where it's like, I don't know why people are banging the desk so hard about the Keystone Pipeline when there are these other issues that seem more pressing, at least from where I'm sitting. Again, not an expert, but that's how it reads to me.
Hey, so I want to take a moment here to talk to you guys about paying off your debt. And to pay off your debt, the best way to start, the smartest way to start, I should say, is with Upstart. So we've been working with Upstart for a while here. You guys should know the drill by now. Upstart helps you with paying off your existing debt quickly and easily with a personal loan so that you can start living your life. Whether it's paying off credit cards, consolidating high interest debt, or funding personal expenses, over 1 million people have used Upstart to get one fixed monthly payment with a clear payoff date. Upstart knows you're more than just a credit score, so rather than looking at your credit score alone, Upstart's model considers other factors like your income, employment, and other information provided in your loan application to find you a smarter rate for your loan. You can check your rate without impacting your credit score in just 5 minutes for loans between $1,000 to $50,000. You can even receive the funds as fast as 1 business day after accepting your loan as well. So find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/Eddie. That's upstart.com/Eddie. Don't forget to use our URL because it lets them know that we sent you, EDDIE. Loan amounts, once again, will be determined based on your credit, income, and other information provided in your loan application. Go to upstart.com/Eddie and start being smarter about your debt today. All right, let's get back into the episode.
And it is ultimately like a supply and demand thing. So it's like, hey, we need more energy and we need more oil. And Saudi Arabia says, no, we like the price where it is. Fuck you. Because they also know that we can't just turn back on the fracking like that. It's like a long process that to increase domestic supply, it takes 10 years. So there's nothing that we could do to just switch the production back on unless you're going to really, in a serious way, dip into the strategic reserves. That's really the only thing you can get. And like while this, and then you talk about Russia invading Ukraine and what has that done to the global energy? Because it's like, did that really increase or decrease supply? If Russia is out of the market. Well, if you like read about all these sanctions, what's the one thing that's not sanctioned?
Oil.
Russian oil and gas. Okay, so it's like that oil and gas is technically still on the market because there's no sanctions because, a lot of these countries, ourselves included, we've become a pretty big importer of Russian oil and gas over the last 2 years. So it's the highest it's ever been. Was at the end of 2021 was the highest U.S. imports of Russian oil and gas had ever been in history. Was at the end of 2021. So it's not technically sanctioned right now. So companies in the U.S. could buy it. Companies aren't buying it, and that goes for Europe as well. They're not buying it because they're like self-sanctioning. So there's no official government body saying it is illegal to buy Russian oil and gas. But companies themselves have done it so much that Russia's biggest crude site is, they call it, they have the Ural Mountains, which kind of is like the dividing line between Europe and Asia. So it comes from kind of deep into Russia, and they pump that into the marketplace. They're having insane discounts on it. Can't move it. They put it up for auction. Be like, buy it, let's just take bids. They had no bids. That was last week, so after the invasion. So there is this available Russian oil and gas, and they're kind of desperate to sell it because their economy is collapsing and they need this money. So there's no sanctions on it, but they still can't sell it because these companies in the West who would normally be buying up left and right at an auction, it's like, holy shit, they're just giving this away. They won't buy it because they're afraid of afraid of the bad PR. Yeah. Being like, someone is buying this oil and gas, and that's leading directly to some dead Ukrainian. That's a problem. And then they have this other issue where, if they did this trade and then they accidentally violated some policy, the fines are so heavy for because there's banking, so it's difficult to do the banking and the transactions because even though you're able to buy the oil and gas, you can't do it, through these different, everyone's talked about SWIFT, but there's these financial institutions that Russia's cut off from. So it's difficult to buy. And if you infringed upon those sanctions, you get fucked. Okay. So they're like, well, we just don't even risk it. Don't buy it. So effectively, while there are no sanctions, there's sanctions. So, and because people are afraid to do business with Russia, and to the point that, we have a lot of Western countries and Western companies that have refineries and other energy related projects in Russia. They're just shutting them down. They're like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. So we're not working there anymore. We're not dealing with Russia shit. We're just out. And so there is this faction. So it's not an official limit of supply, but effectively it is. Effectively, Russia, because so many companies are just out of their marketplace and that they can't sell it even at auction, you're effectively removing that 7% or whatever it is from the marketplace, which limits the supply, which increases the price. So there's all sorts of different things going on. And then the big issue, okay, another big driver. And I feel like this was the one thing that was really missing from that State of the Union when Biden was he was basically I'm going to try to insulate, in his speech, try to insulate the American public from this war through costs, right? I don't want people to have to feel this at the pump if it goes to $7 a gallon. So I'm going to try to insulate that. And he mentioned, wind and solar and all these different things. It's there's a big one out there, and it's nuclear, okay? And it just feels like it's all the data says it's the cleanest, okay? Gives off, shockingly, I was shocked, less radiation than solar and other forms of energy. So its environmental impact is actually the least, and at its capacity, which it hits at 98% of the time, has or 93% of the time has the highest output per dollar. And if you compare that to wind and solar, I think solar is 34% of its max capacity. It reaches max capacity of production at 34 because you're reliant upon the wind. So if the wind's not blowing, you can't really generate that much energy. Same thing with solar. So I might have the numbers flip-flop, but one of them is 24 and the other percent of maximum capacity, and the other one is 33. Those are the percentages for wind and solar. So they're just not that efficient in comparison to traditional fossil fuels, and nowhere near as efficient compared to nuclear energy. So, it feels like now would be the time to look around. And if you want to talk about lowering the price at the pump, well, a really good way to do that would be to have all the homes, your electric car, and everybody's, all these things powered with nuclear. So your home is heated by nuclear energy. Your air conditioner, nuclear energy. Your factory runs on nuclear energy. Electric cars, nuclear energy. So when you plug it into a wall, you're getting it from a nuclear source and not some other type of power system. So that is seemingly, that's something that's on the table that would dramatically, and again, that's a big time infrastructure. You're not going to get that overnight. Some places in Europe, Germany specifically, they have these dormant nuclear facilities because they're trying to go green, and it just kind of fallen on its face. That's why they're building Nord V2 and all these different things. So they decommissioned, and they have these dormant nuclear facilities that they built previously. Like France is almost, I think it's like 84% powered by nuclear energy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so Germany was trending that way. And then they're like, no, we're going to go green. And then we get back to that thing where it's like, well, the green doesn't reliably produce energy as effectively or cost effectively as nuclear. So now it's like, well, we have to shut down this Nord 2 pipeline that they're in construction. We're not buying Russian oil and gas the way that we used to because of these other implications. So they might flip the switch and try to turn back on their nuclear systems that they had like thrown a parade for themselves that they're getting away from, which they never should have been throwing that parade anyways, because all the data suggests that it's the cleanest and the safest. So I don't understand that one. And we did have that guy who was talking about San Francisco, Michael Schellenberger. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Might try to get him back on because he wrote a book about nuclear energy as well, that he could talk more about that. But it seems like that would be a way to decrease the demand for fossil fuels and gasoline or crude oil rather by having another energy source. But it would take, it takes a long time to build that infrastructure. So I don't think there is a switch that can be flipped to drop prices of gas by, $1 overnight. It's just not there as far as I can see. There's definitely people smarter than me. If you're one of those people, I'd love to hear from you.
But it should subside by May, no? I mean, unless if the Russian thing, that's gonna.
Yeah, I think that's a problem.
Fuck it up too much.
And then gas price and when I mean prices always go up in March and April, it's not like significant.
Yeah.
Okay. So like that. Yeah. Yeah. So the production will go up. Okay. In May, if that's what you're alluding to, right? Yeah. So the production will go up in May, but demand might go up in May too, as people are flipping on their air conditioners and they're taking road trips, and you have more energy demands in the summer typically. So the price itself might stay flat, where if they weren't doing that maintenance in March and April, the price would dip.
Yeah.
But because they cut supply, then it kind of levels out. Okay, because there's always in March and April there's always less demand, which is why they do it then. So the price kind of stays instead of dipping, and then when they flip everything back on, it might stay or likely increase because gas prices usually increase in the summer.
And why? What was the big thing in 2008?
I mean, I don't know specifically why, but I would assume it was related to all the other the whole financial system was in chaos. So I would assume it has something to do with that.
Because I feel like people freaked out more in 2008 than now.
About the gas prices?
Do you think so?
Because I also don't know.
You don't know?
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
But again, that would be anecdotal. But I think I'd have to look at other numbers, but people were feeling it financially in more ways than just at the pump. So many people lost their jobs. People are upside down on their mortgages. Like they were, and it was like the pump was just like not the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's like, holy fuck, one more thing. Okay. And then that led to all the fracking things, which, again, that infrastructure that took place over that from 2008 to 2014 and then beyond allowed us to produce so much that we were a net exporter of energy.
And I wonder how much is that because now we've had 14 years because the auto industry did adapt. there was more hybrid cars and there was more, just flex fuel and shit. Like there was more.
Yeah.
They just adapted better. I wonder how much that's helped now 14 years later, but who knows?
It seems like not that much because, and look, I made the crack about the electric car, but like ultimately, like they say, okay, that there are studies done that your carbon footprint driving in a Tesla is not that different
than someone who
when you do like a multivariate analysis of like how much energy it takes to plug it in and how much that sucks out of the grid, out of the system, how much you're actually limiting, because you're still burning a fuel source. So if your area is powered by a coal plant and you're an electric car, you're probably net have a larger carbon footprint than somebody who's fueling up for gas and just running on gasoline.
And can I be honest with you too on that when you say that? And I don't know, I'm sure you definitely read that somewhere, obviously. But, you don't remember where. That's one of the things where I got the antenna up, because the amount of propaganda that is probably out there between these companies fighting to let them keep their source versus the new one is probably insane.
Right. And yes, and I do think regarding a coal plant, it's probably true.
Yeah, sure.
But maybe not for the other ones. Sure. But Elon, Elon is out there right now, right? Like he's sent Starlink satellites to Ukraine, and then he came out last night saying, hold on, I want to find the exact thing. Because he had quotes about energy production. So he had one quote from yesterday saying, "Hopefully, it is now extremely obvious that Europe should restart dormant nuclear power stations and increase power output of existing ones. This is critical to national and international security." Follow-up tweet: "For those who, in parentheses, mistakenly think this is a radiation risk, pick what you think is the worst location. I will travel there and eat locally grown food on TV. I did this in Japan many years ago, shortly after Fukushima. Radiation risk is much, much lower than most people believe." Is Elon right? I don't know. Pretty smart guy. I'm trying to find the other one he said about domestic oil production. Oh, so this was on March 4th. "Hate to say it, but we need to increase oil and gas output immediately. Extraordinary times demand extraordinary measures. Obviously," this is a follow-up tweet, "obviously this would negatively affect Tesla, but sustainable energy solutions simply cannot react instantaneously to make up for Russian oil and gas exports." So he's saying, like, because he's looking at the marketplace and he's like, well, there's no sanctions, but even if they're right now, but they might come, and effectively that Russian oil and gas is not in the marketplace. So we have to have more oil and gas in the market. Otherwise people are going to get fucking banged on this. If you're driving an hour to work every day, and let's say you bought an SUV in 2018, so that's your car, and you get 11 miles or 12 miles to the gallon, and you used to pay $50 to fill up, and now you're paying $100 to fill up, and that is like the biggest thing that you're going to be paying for besides like your mortgage or rent. And food prices are going up because there's everything is on the global scale now, where we've talked about this I think in another episode, where Ukraine is like an Iowa of Europe, okay, where they might be the world's leading producer of sunflower oil. They do a ton of corn, a ton of grain, wheat. So wheat prices are going up, which is going to send food costs up everywhere. So the price of wheat goes up, price of gas goes up. That means the food itself, the product itself in the factory at the door, if you're going to go to Kellogg and buy your food right from the factory, it's still going to be higher. And then you have to bake in the transportation costs that goes from the logistics industry being like, hey, fucking diesel is higher than your gas. So that's everything. So everything is related. Everything. So if the Ukrainian wheat is off the market, that's going to affect people here. It's going to affect people in Australia because it's a global market and we're all fucking twisted around and connected on this thing. And every price is going to go up, and every single person in the world is probably going to feel it some way or another.
Damn.
So I don't know what Elon's talking about, how we would increase supply unless we really tap into strategic reserves. Like there was Biden did that thing in November, like, hey, we're releasing, and it's some big number. I'm going to get the number wrong, but like we're releasing, let's say 300, million barrels of crude. And it's like, well, that helps for literally one day. It sounds like a huge number, but then it's like, how much do Americans consume every day? Basically, we release enough to get us through one day. So it just doesn't really
it doesn't
move the needle. But it sounds great, but it doesn't move the needle. So we need to increase production. And again, I'm not an expert in this industry. Maybe oil and gas companies that shut off some of these places because that were in fracking before. Maybe it's easier to restart those than it is to start from scratch. Maybe. I don't know.
To me, that's what I would think that's like the answer.
I would think.
Like you need some type of production to just even maintain, even if you start losing at some point, just to not be at the fucking mercy of another country, right?
And exactly. Like and that's where the nuclear thing is. Like,
but I don't know all the fucking, like you said, this is not a pro or anti-fracking kind of, but like,
Yeah. But it's I'm going to butcher this, but it's like, all politics is local. Okay. So it's like eventually, and it's that old quote from the 90s where it's like, hey, it's the economy, stupid. Like if the economy is in the shitter and inflation's out of control and gas prices are out of control, well, then, people start pointing that finger. And if it's like, hey, like our solution to help people in the short term is to increase production through X, Y, and Z measure while we ramp up nuclear in the next 5-7 years, then that seems like what should be done. Mm-hmm. And if it's, that's if you have to have hold your nose, if you're an environmentalist, and hold your nose about fracking and stuff for a few years until we get things lined up and we're not, basically on our hands and knees asking OPEC to please, increase supply. And it's like, Maduro, we've talked about him in Venezuela. Venezuela's got incredible reserves that their government has mismanaged so much. And they had all those crazy protests and riots and things down there that I think we did that in 2019.
Inflation was insane.
Yeah. The runaway, like thousands of dollars for a loaf of bread, just crazy issues in Venezuela, to the point that like the entire international community had been like, we don't recognize Maduro anymore as the leader because they had all this conflict. Well, as soon as we need Venezuelan oil back available on the market, let's go down and talk to Maduro. Mm-hmm. So it's like, is that the leader that you're recognizing or not? Because so it's like everybody's freaking out because this is a real issue that everyone's trying to save their ass. And then the other part of it is, and this is not just for the Saudis and not just, for the OPEC nations and not just, but our own domestic suppliers as well. Some of it is like, it'd be nice if you guys just made a little bit less money. Like would it kill you guys to have a little bit less? You guys make crazy money year over year. Can you just short term cut your prices a little bit? Yeah. So instead of making 10% returns, you're making 5% returns, and you net. Again, I don't know. I'm just throwing shit at the wall, but that seems like that could be something too.
Yeah. Wow.
There's an element of corporate greed that's causing the prices to go up as well.
A lot of interesting information, and it actually pretty easily digestible. And
tried my best.
No, I thought you did a great job because that was.
It's not easy.
You're right, though. Yeah. Now your text makes a lot more sense. A lot of moving parts. And
so many. And I'm sure there's probably 100 that I didn't even find or touch on.
Yeah.
The other one is speculation, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're a speculator, some of the reason why the prices were up so much in November, December, in January, prices kept going up, is because the speculators were like looking at what's going on in Russia. They're moving troops, they're posturing. If they go in, there's ramifications. Price of crude is going to go up. So I'm going to buy this oil future and at whatever, hope it goes up and make a fuck ton of money. Yeah. But they're also a factor in driving the price up because the speculation is up. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot.
All right, then. Chief, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then.